Greetings and welcome to this Thursday morning, the 15th of December 2022, the third decade of the 21st century. If you're new to my channel, unfamiliar with me and what I more or less do and stand for, I always open with a bit of a preamble highlighting the date and then emphasizing it's the third decade of the 21st century as a means to more or less juxtapose. Many people thought that we would be more advanced, more evolved as a society, and in some ways we are. But I always do that to highlight where we actually are, what's popular, what's trending, what's in the zeitgeist. More specifically, things like racial issues apparently being as bad or worse as the 1960s and before. And what's funny is some of the people complaining about it weren't even alive back then and have no idea what it was like. And that's just a small sample of what I'm referring to by highlighting the fact it's the third decade of the 21st century. In this video, believe it or not, it's actually my third attempt. As I attempt to wrap my head around how this software works, apparently I have to mute my microphone before I can play the video. So if all goes well, attempt number 3 will be the one that finally gets it done. So in this video, we're watching a post by Alan Ritchson on his Instagram page where he's responding to basically, I don't know what you would call it, not hate mail, but essentially there's a congressman, Maxwell Frost, who ran for office. I still have yet to look him up. I'm sure I could probably look him up on my phone. But apparently he cannot afford an apartment in DC. He cannot afford to secure a place to live in DC so he can live and work in the same area, whether it's his credit score or whatever. And Alan Ritchson reached out to him via Instagram saying, hey, I'd like to help. So this is his response video, in which case I'm going to watch, react, and respond to it. Spoiler alert, I've seen it at least 3 times now. This will be my 4th time watching it, but I always like to pause it during key points to address certain things. As far as my background goes, as far as if you're new, you don't know who I am, you don't know anything about me, I'm essentially low income from the southwest side of Chicago. I had more than some, but I had tremendously a lot less than others. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying poor, but I was low income. I'm not saying I had low conduct or low class, but I was low income. So certain concepts are lost on me, because where I grew up, you either had money or you didn't. All right, you either had the privileges that money affords or you didn't. And then conversely, if money wasn't the option, then you had athleticism and all the privileges athleticism affords, as far as being a star athlete. And then conversely, if you were a star pupil, if you were very academically savvy, then you had all the privileges of being academically savvy. At least growing up, what I remember in the 90s was it was less about our immutable characteristics, and basically it came down to either A, money, B, athleticism, or C, academics, of which I had none. All right, I was an average to below average student. I was not athletically gifted, and as a result of which I joined the military. Joining the military, I was exposed to a lot of different things, because I was also exposed to a lot of different people from various portions of the United States with their different upbringings and different experiences. I was in the Marines for about 20 years, from roughly early 95 to early 15. You know, I've done more than some, less than others. I've seen more than some, less than others. You know, so I'm not going to pretend to sit here like Dan Rather and, you know, so there I was. And I say all this because, in addition to that, I'm not just a veteran. I'm also a husband and a father. I'm the former father of a special needs child, and I've spent time at the Ronald McDonald House. I've also spent time doing Toys for Tots charities. I've also suffered the indignity of losing a child. What does it all mean? I'm a firm believer we are the sum total of our experiences and the sum total of our decisions, and that's where we get to in life, and that's how it shapes how we view the world, and it also has a direct impact on how we receive, process, and interpret information. I'm not woke, if that means anything. I'm very biased towards the Democratic Party. I've made numerous videos discussing confirmation bias. I won't deny and I won't pretend to be a hypocrite. I have a tremendous amount of bias towards the Democratic Party. I try and I struggle every day to be as rational as possible, but for historical reasons and several other reasons, I'm very biased towards the Democratic Party. So your natural instinct is, oh, so you're a Republican, right? I'm not a Republican. For other reasons, of which Mr. Ritchson will more than likely touch on. One of the mistakes, in my personal opinion, that the Republican Party did was to try and get in bed with the church. At some point in time, they reached the ultimate conclusion that a large portion of their voter base was deeply enshrined in religion, so they decided to partner up with religious entities, and it's had a big impact on their politics, to include some very hard lines. Especially, nothing turns me off when people start to invoke religion. With my channel, I always welcome comments. I always welcome the opportunity for discourse. I can explain my thoughts on the Democratic Party. I can explain my thoughts on religion. But at the end of the day, I am who I am. So I'm going to rewatch this video, and I'm going to comment on certain things. First and foremost, it's been my experience that most celebrities, whether they're actors, whether they're musicians, do tend to skew heavily towards the left. Why? I don't know. That just seems to be the case. I'm always disheartened and discouraged when I see celebrities post very, very negative things on their social media towards people who don't share their political views. When I started this channel about almost 2 years ago now, I had recorded about 17 videos in where I was very, very political, and I was very, very negative towards anybody that did not share my political views. I would watch these videos to edit them and whatnot, and I was not pleased with the content because I made the mistake of thinking my videos would be way more popular than they are, and my videos are not. I think I average 1 to 2 views per video, and if I'm lucky, I have one loyal viewer who does take the time to comment. So, my channel is not that popular. I don't have anything to worry about, but I thought I would have something to worry about. I thought that, much like what Mr. Ritchson is going to comment to, there are people with so little to do with their lives that they would actually go out of their way to take the time to adversely affect me because they felt so offended or hurt or triggered by my words. And it gave me pause. And I thought about that for a while, and the conclusion I came to was, if I can think and feel this way, and I think I'm a good person, I think I'm a productive member of society, you know, I'm a rational person, why can't there exist the opposite of that? I'm not saying irrational and bad, but a rational person, productive member of society, who just thinks and feels differently. I think the biggest difference is with these social media platforms, we expose some of our knee-jerk reactions. We expose some of our knee-jerk emotional thoughts without giving any concern to, you know, how destructive they can be. I won't drop any names, but there's been a handful of celebrities from shows that I've watched in the past that have posted some extremely negative things. And let me put that in contrast to you. If we're supposed to be the United States of America, a united population, a united country, and you're a person of influence, you're a person in a celebrity status who has the ability and, dare I say, the power to potentially influence others with your thoughts and opinions, keep in mind when you say extremely negative things about people you disagree with socio-politically, that's potentially half the country. You're potentially drawing a line in the sand that you utterly despise and think so negatively about people you disagree with, which could be half or more of the country, that you're willing to make some very disparaging and negative comments. Now, Mr. Ritchson does his best to steer clear of that, but I'm gonna play the video and you'll see in a moment what I'm talking about. Secondly, people making comments on his, hopefully that didn't destroy anything. People, you know, this happened twice yesterday. These damn spam phone calls, ever since somebody gave up our cell phone numbers to spammers. I digress. I brought all that up because Mr. Ritchson directly addresses how people took to his Instagram feed to make very negative comments, in which case, think about what you're trying to do. I mean, what are you trying to achieve? What is your goal? Do you think by making such negative comments towards Mr. Ritchson, his family, his wife and his kids, that you're going to change his mind, you're going to change his opinion? I mean, come on. I think sometimes people act or react without thinking, without engaging the benefit of their intellect. But don't take my word for it. Let's hear what Mr. Ritchson has to say.
So this last week I made a post about Maxwell Frost, the soon-to-be youngest congressman ever elected to Congress. And while he's a young politician, nothing in my post was political. I simply wanted to offer this young man help if in any way it was possible to reach him with that. And I wanted to do it publicly because I think it's important that we don't gloss over headlines where we see people's lives being affected in great ways and simply think like, wow, that sucks, and do nothing about it. I want to live in a world where we reach out to people, especially people like this young man who is breaking barriers. He's a young black man who did not come from aristocracy or wealth and is breaking into traditionally a rich white man's game.
Okay, I paused it there because this goes back to what I've always said, third decade of the 21st century. I'm always disheartened when I hear this kind of stuff because I'd like to think in the third decade of the 21st century we can move beyond immutable characteristics, where Maxwell Frost can be viewed by his qualifications as an individual, not that he was elected because he's a poor black man. Again, when I said the sum total of our experiences, the sum total of our decisions kind of shape our lives, not really sure where Mr. Ritchson was going with this. You know, it may not have been his intent to highlight those things, but it's like, you know, to me, when we address these immutable things, it's like we're addressing the division in the country that, in my opinion, really shouldn't exist anymore. Not in the third decade of the 21st century. And I'll be honest, this is like the fourth time I've watched the video. It's hard to get a read on whether Mr. Ritchson is addressing it as in like, I'm woke, or if he's addressing it as in, you know, traditionally it does take a lot of money to run a campaign. And, you know, usually it's people that were in law firms, it's people that were doctors, it's people that came from businesses, it's people that had already done enough legwork to secure the funding and to get a big push. And statistically, if that has been upper scale, rich white men, then statistically it can't be argued. But as far as I know, there's plenty of people of color, people that are non-white, that are serving in elected positions. But if I had to register a gripe, that's all I would really register. But it's not enough of an offense where I would have to take to his Instagram feed and be like, you know, and just say something idiotic. Well, let's continue.
And ultimately, this means that we're going to have somebody who is much more representative of his constituency. And that's a wonderful net positive for democracy. We should see more diversity in politics and more people like him. He spent a year and a half campaigning. He racked up debt along the way, trying to find a way to make this campaign last and succeed, which he did. He worked when he could as an Uber driver. which is a difficult salary to meet the bills and demands of this inflation-heavy generation that we're dealing with. This is a young man who needs help. He needs help. And there are many like him. And I find him inspiring. I find what he's doing inspiring. And I feel like it's worth noting that. I feel like it's worth going public with an offer to help these kind of people. So it reminds people that, oh, there's a real human being there who's facing difficulties. And if there's something I can do, I'd like to offer. As an actor,
So he's beginning to switch topics there, and I wanted to address that portion of the video. First and foremost, let's remove certain features, right? Let's stick to the basics. All right, Mr. Frost is younger. So like Mr. Ritchson was saying, Mr. Frost is going to represent a specific demographic that may or may not be represented right now in Congress. All right, if the overwhelming majority, statistically speaking, are people of a certain age or higher, then yes, even age can be a diversity. It's a different generation. It's Mr. Frost might represent a generation of individuals who have never known life without the internet. All right, and maybe they need representation, and I'm all for that. Mr. Frost might represent those who are low income, and you know, I applaud him for this grassroots campaign that got him elected. All right, the people spoke and they elected somebody that was not your established wealthy individual. And if that's what inspired Mr. Ritchson, then so be it. Why is it anybody's business what he does with his money? Why is it any of your concern what he wants to do in his off time to help support somebody? Now, look, I understand if for a moment you calm down and you get back to your rational senses and maybe you don't like what Mr. Frost stands for. Pardon me. You don't like Mr. Frost's politics. You don't like his party. Whatever the case may be. Maybe you have some substance. You have some foundational reasons for not approving of Mr. Frost representing your district, okay? Or your state. That's fine. And if you communicated that in a calm, rational manner, so be it. But that's not what Mr. Ritchson is referring to. He's referring to the people that, for all intents and purposes, have no wherewithal. They have no foresight. They can't see the forest through the trees. But don't take my word for it.
I'm on the receiving end of a dehumanizing social media platform often. There are many people who've talked about me, who talked about my wife, my family, in a way as if I'm not a human, as if like we don't have real issues or difficulties or challenges that we face emotionally, internally, externally, whatever that might be. And so, you know, I know a lot of people who are affected by these random slingshots thrown at them, and the people slinging these arrows completely forget that there's a human being on the other side of that. And I want to remind people that there is a human being. I see that human being. I'm inspired by that human being. I want to offer to help that human being. That's why it was public. And it was met with an unbelievable amount of vitriol by, I'm guessing, if I had to guess, by the political right, by people whose ideology is based in rugged individualism, who strangely, Pew Research, I've said this many times, has shown that over 80% of Republicans profess to be Christians, and yet rugged individualism is one that refuses to help those who need it most.
So I paused it right there. I'm probably somebody who would, politically speaking, align more with the right than the left. I do fancy myself more politically centered. There's various issues that the left represents, and I love these labels: left, liberal, Democrat, progressive, whatever. So what I've learned through some of my own personal research is between red versus blue, right versus left, whatever the case may be, many of us are only interested in one or two core issues, maybe a couple more. All right? If you want to try to understand me a little bit better, I'm a big fan of freedom of speech, and I feel like freedom of speech has been directly under attack lately, and people are speaking very eloquently on why they believe freedom of speech should be under fire. I believe in the Second Amendment. Do you need to own a tank? You don't need to, but you should be allowed to own a tank if you can afford to own a tank. And you should be able to arm that tank and fuel that tank if you can afford to do so. Why? Because the sole purpose, in my humble opinion, is the reason to bear arms is A, it scares the crap out of anybody trying to invade us, and B, it's supposed to scare the crap out of the government, because in the event the government grows beyond its capacity, in the event that the government decides to overreach, like anybody who watches Star Wars, I'm watching the Andor series right now, and it's all about imperial overreach, imperial martial law and whatnot. So we're supposed to be able to protect ourselves when our elected leaders, who are public servants, all right, they are employed by us. We are their bosses. They're not leaders, they're employees. We are the leaders. We are the boss. And in the event that these people lose sight of that and they try to take actions against us, I want to be able to defend myself. And then, of course, I believe in smaller government. We don't need to increase the size of the government. Unfortunately, what a lot of people lose sight of is in many areas of industry, economics, you name it, the government is not the solution. Government regulations, government bureaucracy, government hypocrisy is not the solution. Capitalism is. Some people don't like capitalism. That's fine. You know what else you have the freedom to do? Leave. Leave. How many people threatened to leave when the previous president was elected? And how many of them went back on their word? I'm just saying. So I tend to be center to center right, but because of what Mr. Ritchson is saying, I'm not a card-carrying Republican, because these people are invoking religion. I'm less than thrilled with the way he brings up in a somewhat negative attribute people that may be on the right, but it's hard to argue with him. It's very hard to argue with him, because if these people are saying horrifically negative things on his Instagram channel, why should he not be allowed to respond with any kind of emotion? That's what America's all about. I know, for 20 years, I fought to defend the Constitution of the United States. All right, that was the oath of my enlistment, the Constitution. All right. I'm not exactly thrilled with him saying, oh, these are the people that are doing it, almost like, you know, the waggy finger that I've seen a lot of celebrities do, but that's his opinion. That's his thoughts. And he's also responding to some, more than likely, very negative, hateful things.
Look at the comments. They're rooted in this idea that we should only help the most qualified. It's wholly antithetical to Scripture. And I beg the question, show me in Scripture where rugged individualism is praised. Show me where in God's Word, if you profess to be a Christian, where rugged individualism has a net positive effect on the community. This is not compatible with Scripture. I'm going to read this quick paragraph from Richard Ayres. He wrote an article for Yale called "The Bible and Rugged Individualism." Old Testament law and practice can be contrasted with the modern ideology of autonomous or rugged individualism. In its extreme form, proponents of this ideology insist that it is right to seek one's own advantage, but wrong to assist others, except in exchange for equal value received. According to this vision, life from cradle to grave consists of a perpetual process of bargaining or trading value for value. The tacit corollary is that social safety nets are an anathema, and that people who are unable to pay their own way should be so obliging as to perish quietly, preferably out of sight, without disturbing the more fortunate. Those who cannot pay their way, including children, the ill, disabled, unemployed, disaster victims, future generations, and all kinds of domestic animals and wildlife, do not count, since, necessarily, they're unable to exchange quid pro quo with present-day entrepreneurs. You only have to look so far as my post to put it in a context where it comes to life. The vitriol behind those who praise rugged individualism is astonishing. We see in Judges, we get this quick verse. It's easy to gloss over. It says, "In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes." Judges 21:25. That verse is strung in between the context of these 4 chapters that describe the course of gruesome events during very chaotic years, 1200 to 1000 BC. And the idea being that every man doing what was right in his own eyes is what life looked like then, driven by rugged individualism. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. The chaos that ensued in the course of time in that society was downright treacherous to the community, to the greater good. We contrast this with the New Testament, where we get in Galatians 6:2, "Carry each other's burdens, and so you will fulfill the law of Christ." In Philippians 2:4, "Instead of each person watching out for their own good, watch out for what is better for others." These themes are everywhere in the pages of Scripture, and they fly in the face of this concept of Republican ideology, where we only help those who can help themselves the most, or only help those who need it least. We'll hear things like these lines in Galatians, these verses in Galatians or Philippians, where we talk about carrying each other's burdens, or watch out for what is better for others, and rarely, if ever, have some qualifying remark. If they are good, if they deserve it, if they've already proven that they can work within the framework of the capitalistic system that has been established in their day and age, like whatever. There's no qualification for the aid that Jesus gave to the woman at the well, to the woman caught in adultery, to the many people who were outcasts of societies, who were considered unclean and unworthy. He reached into the lives of these people and made them clean, and didn't become unclean in doing so. And he's called us to take on that same kind of responsibility for others. I am shocked at how many people profess to be Christians and cling to this vicious idea of rugged individualism that is not found in the pages of Scriptures. If you can find it, please let me know. It'd be great to not feel the burden of needing to care for those around me. But I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find it. So this last week I made a post.
So very interesting there, and obviously part of what I get out of that is a little bit of an emotional response based on some very negative things that were said on his channel. A few points there, most of which is very individualized to me. I'm not a religious person. Unlike Mr. Ritchson, I can't quote the Bible. I don't even have a Bible. It's just not a part of who I am. So, clearly he seems to be somebody who does partake in Christianity, and it has a lot to do with his life. And perhaps in his own experiences, he finds a great deal of hypocrisy in a political group that has aligned themselves with Christianity, but don't follow the principles that he believes in. And you know what? That's fine. That's what America's all about. The freedom to you do you. One of my biggest problems as of lately is I'll do me, you do you, you leave me alone, I leave you alone. My general interpretation is that a lot of people don't want to leave you alone. A lot of people want to force their ideology on you. I'll go one step further. My sum total of my experiences comes to the decision point that the left claims to be the side of tolerance. The Democrats claim to be the party of tolerance. And yet the people they represent, to include themselves, have no tolerance. So I don't agree, so I don't like, so I don't appreciate or approve. Who cares? How do I actually affect your life? If I don't agree with the concept of pronouns or your pronouns in general, how does that affect your life? And I've made a video on that, so I'm not going to try to repeat myself there. Mr. Ritchson talks about, these people that claim to be self-righteous Christians and align themselves with the right, Republican Party, what have you, and how through some of their own actions they contradict. And you know what? Some of these people would probably find a way to eloquently defend themselves. It goes back to a video I'm getting ready to post today, which is, where does the cycle stop? Where do we stop, selfishly trying to one up each other over who's right and who's wrong, and just live and let live? But I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. At the end of the day, what Mr. Ritchson wants to do with his resources is entirely up to him, and I don't see how it's anybody's business. If you calmly, kindly, courteously, and rationally made your feelings known on his Instagram feed that you disagree with Mr. Frost's politics, you disagree with his policies, so be it. At the end of the day, still none of your business what Mr. Ritchson wants to do with his money. You do you, he'll do himself. As far as bias goes, not going to lie, I'm a bit biased towards Mr. Ritchson. All right, I really enjoyed him as Arthur Curry on Smallville, and then of course Thad Hamilton on Blue Mountain State. I have not seen his version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I have seen him in Titans, and most recently in Reacher. And I mean, I just enjoy his body of work. I just enjoy how he portrays things. So I may have a bit of a softer side for Mr. Ritchson. Plus, the overwhelming majority of his content on Instagram is very non-political. All right. So are there times when celebrities post stuff that I find disheartening, displeasurable, unkind, disruptive, divisive? Of course I do. At the end of the day, they're entitled to their opinion. I would caution them to consider, not everybody has to agree with you. You're not always right. Just because you feel a certain way about something, you're not right. And same goes for me. All right, I might think and feel a certain way, but that doesn't mean it's got to be right for everybody. It doesn't have to be their reality. It's just sad that, all he wanted to do was help an individual. All right, just strip away some other things, and he just wanted to help somebody, and people had a problem with that. People had a problem with that. If need be, if you took the time to watch this, go ahead and leave a comment. I don't care about the subscriptions. I don't care about the likes or the dislikes or the notification bell or the rumbles. I really just want to hear from people. Whether you're a hardcore righty, whether you're a hardcore Christian, or maybe you're not. I'm just trying to increase conversation. It's my belief that a lot of us do exist in the purple, but we find ourselves torn. We find ourselves at a crossroads. You either have the choice of going left or going right, because we do not have a third option, at least not a viable third option. For me, I've dumbed it down to Democrats are a very, very large breed of dog. They're going to crap in my yard and leave a huge mess. Republicans are a much smaller breed of dog. They're going to crap in my yard but leave a much smaller mess. And I'm open to the idea that people understand that analogy but feel differently. They feel the Republican is the larger dog leaving a larger mess. And that's fine. I'm just trying to open up the opportunity to have discussions about it. Because otherwise, we retreat into our echo chambers. We surround ourselves with people who agree with us. And I got a person on my channel, Stace Catalin, who's my one loyal viewer and the one who does take the time to comment. And she's estranged from her family because she sees things differently. She's carving out her own path. She's making her own life. And it just astonishes me that people in her family would go so far with their politics to mistreat her and disown her. And that's why she's always been welcome on my channel. We don't have to agree. We can disagree. We can even disagree, not emotionally, but well, maybe emotionally. Very, very adamantly disagree. But I recognize her as a person. I recognize her as a human being. I recognize her as someone just trying to make their way in this world. And I don't have to, like Mr. Ritchson said, dehumanize her. I don't have to demonize her. All right? I accept her as a person. I don't have to accept everything as far as like, oh, that's how you feel about that? Yeah, that's not for me. And vice versa. She doesn't have to agree or accept everything I'm into. I mean, my God, if you're looking in the background, I've got all my Firefly stuff on the top shelf, and I've got all my Mandalorian stuff on the second shelf, and then I got all my cosplay materials down there. If for some ungodly strange reason, Mr. Ritchson, you stumble upon this video and you've made it this far and you've listened to this ginger Babylon, is there any chance in hell you can make it to GalaxyCon in Raleigh 2023? That would be super, super awesome. I think it'd be so awesome to meet you. And if for some reason you do stumble upon my channel, I got a killer French toast recipe for you. Who knows? Maybe I'll leave it in the description. So if you leave a comment, I greatly appreciate it. I will read it, react, and respond. And if you do, you're awesome. Till next time.